Hi everyone in English 2323. Welcome to week 2. We made it. That's awesome. What I want to do this week is offer you a video that kind of walks through the expectations and the guidelines for the discussion post. So what I'll do is I'll bring up the rubric, which is available to you on D2L, and I'll just kind of walk through the different bits of information just to make sure that you don't have any questions about what we need to do moving forward when we're doing our weekly posting, right after we do our reading. So I'm just going to pull that up on D2L. You'll see that I'm in week number 2, and I'm going to click on the rubric here. So this is just a document that's set up in a grid format. I don't know why this is cutting off, but that's okay. So on the left-hand side, if you are seeking an A grade, then you want to, meet these expectations here. And then depending on the amount of points offered for a particular assignment, then you want to reach an A, for example, get 13.5 to 15 points if it's a 15-point grade. And if you scroll down, we have the different grades and expectations. I'm only going to really talk about the A and B area because I'm thinking we should definitely be avoiding the F and D, but even for the C, we should be, aiming for the higher grades, right? So if you look at the category, the content, there are a few points, related to the content. There are a few points related to format over on this side. And then there's the UG stuff, and that's the stuff that it is UG, but it's something that we have to kind of think about for English and literature classes. So for the content, for an A grade, the post adheres to the prompt, right? Especially if there are multiple questions, right? And typically prompts will have multiple questions. So you are making sure to answer each of those kinds of things. And it shows a clear understanding, your post does, of the assigned reading. You kind of show that you've read, not just that you kind of skimmed, but that you really worked through and were actively engaged in the reading, that you understood it, right? Your ideas are well structured and clear. If research is required, which oftentimes I'll just ask you to pull quotes, right, from our course text, just make sure you're following MLA guidelines there, right? Your quotes are incorporated clearly, you give credit, and you also, of course, explain the relevance or the importance of the quote, right? Don't just one of my pet peeves, and I feel it's important to share those with you because how else would you know? One of my pet peeves is when folks just drop quotes in the middle of a paragraph or at the beginning or at the end without introducing them, without explaining why it's relevant. This is stuff from 1301 and 1302 or just, writing in general. When we're using other people's words or ideas, we have to make sure that we're explaining them and, of course, giving credit. So you can give credit to the author. So if we're talking about Barbald this week, which we are, and you quote something from her poem, give her credit for that. If you're quoting something from, the introductory chapter on the Romantic era, or if you're quoting from, say, Barbald's biography, she didn't write her own biography, right? Just give credit to our overall editor, who is Stephen Greenblatt. Just put Greenblatt. It's on the book in the text, right? So just look at the spine of the text if you have the print version. We'll just give him the general credit, even though there are multiple editors that are going into our course text. So just keep those kinds of things in mind. Always explain the relevance of those quotes, okay? The format, you meet the minimum length required. Paragraphs are generally 4 to 5 sentences, just if no research is required, but then 6 to 7 or so are required if you're using research, only because you need to introduce the quote, explain the quote, etc. MLA formatting guidelines are being followed. Your work reflects, this is the UG stuff, proofreading, right, and editing. It's an English course. A lot of what we do is based on, we're in an online format, so writing becomes everything. You need to make sure that you're revising and editing. And I will say this now, and I'll say it again in the future. Use Microsoft Word. Compose your work in Microsoft Word and make sure the spell check and the grammar check features are turned on. If you're using Google Docs, those features are there as well. It sometimes will autocorrect those things for you, so you don't have to worry too much. They're not perfect, right? They will not catch everything that you need to address, but they're a good start, right? You're going to get those squiggly lines for, misspellings, or if you're not capitalizing I, the first person I. You can also use Grammarly. we have these tools at our fingertips. Why not utilize them? Grammarly isn't writing your work for you. It's just helping you with some of the edits, right? So use those tools because you will be graded on how effectively you're communicating your ideas, which means that grammar and spelling need to be, in the best possible corrected form as possible, okay? So proofreading is there, free of those surface level issues such as sentence fragments, run-ons, yada yada. Very, very, very few grammatical issues. Again, I'm not a grammar expert. I don't expect you to be a grammar expert. I'm not going to count off 0.5 points for this, that, and the other. I don't think that's useful. I will point out errors, but only because I think that you seeing some of those things can help you then rethink the way you're writing and your habits, right? A lot of the grammar or spelling things are just habits that we formed over the years, and we just need to kind of notice that those are things that we do. Okay, if the responses are required, which typically they are, 2 thoughtful, well-organized responses, so you need to respond to 2 people with at least a paragraph, 4 to 5 sentences. I'm a little bit flexible on it, but it needs to be, a full, rich response to somebody else's work and ideas. So it's like you're having a conversation. So if somebody wrote a response that is really interesting to you, these are things you hadn't thought about, write that and say, I was thinking about this poem in such and such way, but you helped me see, show that you've read not only our required course text, but you've read this person's ideas, right? And you are revising and editing those responses as well. Okay, a lot of times I'll ask you to create questions that you'll ask one another, but we're just getting kind of into the semester, so just read their work, respond. If you disagree with something, that's absolutely fine. Just be aware of tone and that when we're in an online environment, we can't really see each other's facial cues. You want to be as polite as possible. So what you think is just kind of you're putting your ideas down, you need to understand that somebody may read that a bit more harshly. So do your best to stay away from anything that could be read that way, especially if you just are bringing up something that you maybe disagree about, which is fine. We want to push each other's ideas, okay? So that's the A range, right? And then as we get into B, it's very similar to A, but it's just, kind of straying a little bit. So mostly adheres to the prompt. Ideas are still well structured. Quotes are incorporated. Credit is given. It meets or is close to the minimum length, right? So it's all of those things in the A range, but just falling short just a tad, right? And then when we get into the C, that's falling short even more so, but I'm not going to cover that. So for the discussion post, I really want you to think about the fact that because we're not together face to face, we need to create that kind of conversation in our writing, okay? That can be kind of stressful though, because writing comes with, we need to check grammar, we need to check spelling in a way that we don't have to do when we're just sitting in a classroom and having a conversation about something we read, right? So there is that added step of work to really compose and revise your response. But sometimes that's helpful because sometimes in class, in the moment, it's really hard to get your ideas out in a way that is productive or in a way that you feel is really communicating, what you're thinking. Whereas when you have the time to sit and work in a written format, you can really work through those ideas in a different way. So take that into consideration when you're responding to the prompts and especially when you're responding to one another. If you do have any questions about this assignment throughout the semester, just reach out to me via email or post in that Q&A discussion board area. Okay, good luck.